Morning YouTube, Doc's Motorcycle Service. Welcome back to the garage. We're going to talk about something this morning that I think is pretty important, and we're going to try to explain it. Not only we're going to talk about it, not only going to do it, but we're going to explain it. I'm sorry, everybody out here is wrapped different. I have to understand why something is important in order to appreciate why it's important. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. And what I want to talk about first is tolerances. When something is made, when it is designed by an engineer or whoever, if you put two pieces of something together, one has to fit in the other one, or the other one has to fit in it, or however, it has to be within tolerance. And that means that it works together. One end's not too big and the other end's not too small. And if it operates in that envelope above the minimum but below the maximum, everything's good. Take, for example, an airplane. Visualize one of these little two-seater airplanes that you see wherever you see them at. That plane's not going to get off the ground at 10 miles an hour. Okay? It has to get up maybe to 80 or 90 miles an hour for the wind to start going under the wing at a certain speed to create lift for the plane to go off into the air. All right? That's above the minimum. It's right there, just enough to get it off the ground. While at the same time, if you take that airplane 10 or 11,000 feet up in the air, you turn it straight down and you give it full throttle, it may disintegrate before it hits the ground. The wings may rip off of it because it was not designed to go that fast. It was above the maximum tolerance. Does that make sense? Okay, if it doesn't, I can't help you. That's just the best way I can to explain it. It made sense to Linda. So, I'm just saying. Got to be smarter than Linda. I'm kidding. I'm not going to. Linda's dying behind the camera. So now you understand tolerances. Now we're going to talk about neck bearings on a motorcycle, and we're going to talk about fall away. Well, you might say to yourself, what is fall away? Fall away is the proper adjustment of the front of the motorcycle, with the motorcycle being to turn all the way to the right and all the way to the left, but it has a center area. Think of it as the alignment on your car. You know, anytime you get new tires on the car, or you have any front end work done on the car, it has to be realigned because you've loosened all those things. They were where they needed to be at before, so you got proper tire wear level across the bottom of your front wheels, but now you've taken it out of tolerance. You've put a new piece into it. So it has to be put on the machine and it has to be aligned again so you get proper tire wear going down the road. They call that, on a motorcycle, the neck bearing adjustment. People call it fall away. And it's where your steering system is just naturally right in the middle of the motorcycle. I'm trying my best to make this easy because when I first started looking into it, it wasn't real easy for me to understand. So, and the way I'm explaining it might not be easy for you, okay? But I'm just trying to break it down into the lowest common denominator. There is a sequence that you do to the front end of the motorcycle. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the parts of the motorcycle. I mean, on the front end of the motorcycle to me is the most important part. You might say, well, no, I like the rear end of the motorcycle because the rear end makes you go zoom, 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 zoom. Well, if you can't steer the damn thing, you're only going to go straight until you stop or hit something. So I think the steering mechanism is the most important part of it. So what is the front end of the motorcycle? Well, you got the handlebars, you got the riser, you got your stem assembly, you got your fork tubes, you got your sliders, and you got your wheel. Now notice that I didn't say anything about the brake caliper. Brake caliper is optional. You don't need it on the front of the vehicle to steer it. And I didn't say anything about the fender. But anyway, this makes up the front end of the motorcycle. And there's a tolerance that it has to be in. And that tolerance is basically finding the center of the fender and then taking your finger and pushing the fender one way until it falls away. Like you put your finger right here and you start pushing it, and then all of a sudden you're still pushing, but the fender falls away. And then you do the same thing the other way. You're not pushing it over, you're just pushing it till it gets past that center and it falls away. That, according to the service manual, after you find the middle of the fender, should be a 2-inch area. It should go to right here, and then it should fall away on its own, and it should go to right here, and it should go and fall on. If it falls away sooner, it's out of tolerance. If you have to push it past that 2-inch area before it falls away, it's out of tolerance. And we're going to do that this morning on Hot Donna. The reason we're going to do it now is because, according to the manual, service manual, tech tip, it says that you should do this every 5,000 miles. And in order to do it properly, you should disconnect all the cables from the front end of the handlebars. Now you're thinking, why in the world would I want to do that? Well, it's quite simple. This is the soldering gun, the soldering tip for my electronic solder gun. Notice how flexible it is. See that? It's pretty flexible. This is a speedometer cable. It's not very flexible. Matter of fact, if I took it right here and held it by my finger, see how it has its own rigidness? Okay. With this mounted to the speedometer and then mounted to the speedometer gear on the wheel, this could provide resistance to the wheel falling away one way or the other and give a false reading. So that's why your service manual suggests that you disconnect all these cables. Donna has no cables on her right now. She has the wiring harnesses for the handlebar controls coming out the bottom, but they're pretty flexible, and I'm actually going to take some zip ties and take them up and put them on the side of the handlebar so they're not touching anything. We don't have the brake caliper on, which could be additional weight on the other side. So now is the perfect time because we're getting ready to completely wire the front end of this thing in the next video. So I want to do this in its perfect state to do this. And as the book says, you need to have the motorcycle on a level surface. You need to have the front wheel up in the air so it's not touching the ground. And you need to be able to let the steering wheel go all the way each way without any interference. That speedometer cable would offer interference. The front brake caliper, front brake hose would offer resistance. The fender tip light might offer some resistance. The clutch cable would offer some resistance. The throttle cables would offer some resistance. So let's be honest for a minute. I'll bet you money that if you're doing this on your own and your bike is in a complete rideable condition, you're not going to take the time to loosen all these. I mean, my God, if you had an Ultra Classic with a front fairing on it, think of everything that you would have to go through to get that done. So I get it, you're not going to do it, but we're going to do it in the state that Donna is before we move forward. See, the key to this whole process is the nut, and hopefully I'll have a picture for you to see right here from a previous video we done, and I'm also going to put up a link to a previous video when we put the front end of this thing back together so you can see how it went. But hopefully in this part of the video I have put up some pictures so you can actually see what I'm talking about. The neck of this bike is where the stem assembly meets the frame, and it slides in, and there's a bolt comes through the bottom, and then there's a nut that goes on the top. Well, guess what? That nut does not get tightened. If I'm understanding the service manual correctly, if the steering is too tight, instead we loosen the nut. But that nut will never be torqued down. It floats on that bolt. Fall away. A test to determine if the front end of the motorcycle is where it should be. Not too tight, not too loose. And there's a couple other ways on your motorcycle that you can feel of this. One way is to get it up in the air and grab the front forks and see if they move. If they're moving, if there's clunks, it's too loose and needs to be tightened up. And again, like right here, should be a picture of the old bearings that we took out of this thing and how nasty they were. And you can tell from how nasty they are that this thing hadn't been checked or greased in a long time. You need to understand these things. We're going to first look at it and see if it's in tolerance, and if it's not in tolerance, if it's not in there, then we're going to make the adjustments to put it in there. Also, one thing to keep in mind is prior to doing this adjustment, you have to loosen these pinch bolts. Well, at least you do on this one. Again, consult your service manual. Okay, so we got the wheel off the ground, a level on it to make sure that it's level. We have our cables on that side tied up and our wiring on this side tied up. So now we're going to go to the fender and get it set up. Bike is ready to go. Got it set up. So what we're going to use now is some tape. We're going to put this across the fender. We're going to find the center of the fender and we're going to mark it with the Sharpie. And then we're going to use a tape measure and we're going to go 2 inches or an inch to the left and an inch to the right of that center mark. That will be our tolerance. Finding the middle of the bike, that's on you to do. Some of this you've got to do for you. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. But with Donna, we have a fender tip light, which has a light bulb mounted right in the middle of it. And we have a small indention on the chrome part that you can put a screwdriver in to remove the lens. Eyeballing it, it looks like it's mounted center, so we're going to use that as our center. We're going to take this tape and put right across it. We're going to mark it, get the camera set up so you can see, and we'll be ready to go. Tech tip, make sure that you use tape that doesn't leave a residue. I would not use duct tape on this. I'm using some blue painter's tape or frog tape or something like that. Alright, we got our tape on here. I found a middle mark right here, inch there, inch. So we'll put this up here. You can use whatever you want to. We'll put the middle line right there. We got the camera set up. We're using a pencil. We've got our tape set up. Here's our grid. Here's our 2-inch window, our tolerance. So the theory here is that I will push against the fender this way with my finger, and if the fender falls away from my finger before it gets to this line, we're good. If I'm still pushing it and the fender has not fallen away and the pencil is outside of this line, that's bad. So here we go. Pushing slowly. It looks like we're up to that one. A little bit more. Boom. There's your fall away. So from my angle, it looked like it started to fall away somewhere about right there. So that's out of tolerance. So now we're going to center it. Linda, how does it look?
Come this way just a little.
This way or this way?
That way.
Alright, I'm standing on the side. Right there?
Yeah.
Alright, so now I'll come to this side and do the same thing. Still pushing outside of tolerance. Outside. Outside. Fall away. So that one's outside as well. The service manual says if the adjustment is less than 1 inch, you tighten the adjustment nut slightly. If the adjustment is more than 2 inches, you loosen the adjustment nut slightly. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to do it in about an 1/8 of an inch increment. All right. Now that that's done, we're going to perform the test again. It's wanting to go. All right. Did you see how that 1/8 of an inch adjustment worked? Still not in tolerance on that side. All right. So we're going to loosen it another 1/8 of an inch. It's getting there. All right. So instead of doing both sides to expedite this, we're just going to do another 1/8 of an inch. All right, here we go. We're getting there. Almost getting it there. Not quite. Think we got a winner on that side. Let's look at it again. Linda, eyeball it. Let me know when it starts to fall away. Look good?
More toward you. Okay.
All right, eyeball it. Yep. All right, that was good. All right, here we go. This side. Yep. Boom. So now, was it too much? Was it within 1 inch of each other? All right, it was about right here, a little bit less than a 1/2 inch on the fall away. About the same. All right, so we loosened these for the adjustment. Now we're going to tighten them back up. And I'll put the quietus on them, as my daddy used to say, once I get the wheel back down on the ground. Now getting set up for this thing, again, you're going to need some tape. You're going to need a pointer. And since we're a garage here, we use what we had laying around to stack up and get things pretty close to where they needed to be at. So you can use cinder blocks. You can do whatever you need to make this thing right. All right, well there you go. Now we have her in specs. We have her in the tolerance of where she's supposed to be at. Again, read your service manual. Again, understand that this is the front of your motorcycle. This is on you to make sure it's right, because if this thing is too loose, you're going to go into a curve and you might have some vibration in there that could make the bike unstable. Follow your service manual, service manual, service manual, service manual, your specifications. Now, I'm not going to try to explain the loosening of the nut to make the wheel less movable on the bottom end. That's physics. I didn't design the bike. I don't understand it. But there you go. Disclaimer, this is how I do it. You do it any way you want to do. The purpose of these videos is to clarify information and tests that are out there and to pass on knowledge to you. So hopefully you can then pass it on. If you haven't already done it, check out the Facebook page. Leave a comment, leave a question. I'm starting to get some questions asked on YouTube, but YouTube, for whatever reason, I don't get the notification that somebody's left a comment for 2 or 3 or 4 days. I don't know why. Maybe that's just the way YouTube is. That's why I direct you to the Facebook page, because the Facebook page, you put something there, I instantly get notification that it's there. Give us a thumbs up when you're done watching. Subscribe to the channel to watch more videos. This will probably be a sidebar, only because it's not only relative to Hot Donna, but it's relative to your motorcycle as well. So YouTube, as always, I appreciate you coming by the garage. Rate, comment, share. Y'all take care. See you. And